We have with us Landside Manager for SeaTac International Airport, Stacy Mattson, who will go first.
Thank you for having me. Thanks to Ray for inviting me. I've been coming to these meetings for, I want to say, 9 or 10 years now, and I have to say I always have a great time. I think what we do as landside managers in airports it's really unique work. So as I was saying, very unique landside managers. But I do appreciate being able to network and share insights because I think what we do is so different and so unique. So just thank you all, and to be able to spend time with our stakeholders too. Many of our airports here have operators that are present, so I think it's just a great opportunity, and just wanted to thank everybody for being a part of my network for so many years. We have not been at this TNC thing too long in SeaTac. When you hear from Abu and his presentation and all the stats he has to share, they're going to be much more extensive than what I have to share. We've only, as far as implementation goes, had TNCs at our airport for 5 months. So a lot of the things I'm sharing with you are sort of in terms of like pilot type conditions and estimates and some of the challenges and things that have gone quite well. But before I get into that, I just wanted to share a little bit information about our airport in case you don't know. SeaTac Airport saw 42.3 million passengers in 2015. We were not expected to see those kinds of volumes until 2018. That represented a 12% increase over 2014 figures. Pretty phenomenal. Scary but exciting, we are trending the same. So we thought we couldn't possibly see the growth that we saw last year in 2016, but we are trending about the same for 2016, which means that we have been the fastest growing large hub airport for 2 years in a row now. So that's a great problem to have. It's very exciting, but we are dealing with a lot of growing pains, and we have a lot of challenges ahead of us in regard to gate management and other constraints on the land side. We're the 13th busiest airport in the country, 80 gates, 24 airlines, and 51% of our passengers love our hometown carrier of Alaska Airlines. So in preparing for TNCs at SeaTac Airport, we started having the conversation about 2.5 years ago, and we only implemented 5 months ago. So as you can see, we're one of the airports that let other people embrace it first, like my friend Abu at San Francisco and Chris at Nashville. You guys sort of embraced it a lot quicker than we did in many other airports at SeaTac. So we talked about it for a long time. We thought about it. We talked about it. We thought about it. We did some outreach. We watched others. We did the wait and see approach for a while. And just over 2 years later, we did implement them. But these were sort of the buckets of things that we wanted to sort of label as important topics and concepts for our airport. And I'll go through each one of these separately, but just to list them quickly. We needed to have our internal discussion and outreach. We needed to address our high environmental standards at SeaTac. We wanted to know how technology and the data reporting played into it, operational ramp up, public outreach, our terms and fees. I'm going to go through each one of these. So internal discussion and preparation, I'm sure like many of you who are airport managers, this is sort of a big deal. You have a lot of stakeholders, a lot of interdepartmental dependencies to consider. You have your executives and your commission, maybe some of you have boards. We needed to make sure they understood the services and whether or not they supported them. At their level, they're not into the day-to-day management, so my colleagues and I can sit around all day and decide what we think is best for our airport, but until we have that formal direction from our CEO and from our commissioners, we're really not able to do too much work. So that took a lot of time. Ultimately, what our executive and our commission told us was, we want the services. We're hearing from our constituents that we want these services here. We're hearing from our customers that we want the services here, so we expect you to work toward that. But before you do that, we want you to do a big outreach program. We want you to contact all of your ground transportation providers, meet with them, and figure out what they think about it. So we did that. The level playing field conversation is a popular conversation for all of us. At our airport in particular, we have a pretty complex cost recovery system, and we wanted to make sure that whatever we did was pretty equal to the similar services. Also, evaluating on-demand and pre-arranged was a key element for us. When you're an on-demand operator, you usually have better customer access than you do as a pre-arranged operator, so we wanted to make sure we considered that too. The impact to our revenue businesses. So at our airport, we have 2 large on-demand services that bring in quite a lot of money for our airport, so it was really important for us to know sort of our figure or estimate what that might do. We have an on-demand taxi contract and an on-demand limo contract, and that generates $5 million a year in revenue. At our airport, we have typically practiced closed system principles. We have not ever been an airport that allows multiple taxi providers or multiple limo providers unless they're prearranged to operate our airport. So having the T&C discussion sort of opened our mind to, do we need to be a little bit more open about that? This is how we've operated. We've thought it's the best thing for our airport for many, many years. In fact, we've operated that way since the mid-'80s, so it's been a long time that we've been practicing that. And of course, like other airports, we have the operating area and capacity constraints. And we wanted to make sure that any decision we made were in line with our strategic initiatives as an airport. Okay, so you've heard me say it before, but in Seattle, at our airport, and in the city of Seattle, we have higher environmental standards for everything we do. We currently have 16 huge, big environmental goals at SeaTac that range anywhere from air quality to transportation to recycling programs. And amongst those 16 goals, there are 100 actions that our airport is seeking just this year, 100 different actions that we're working on. So that's just to sort of paint the picture of how important environmental standards are to our airport. So if we're going to get involved in any kind of new operating agreement with anybody, there's going to be some kind of metric here. And so what we've done at SeaTac, I believe, has not been done anywhere else, and I believe is complex, and I cannot intelligently describe the calculation of it. And we also haven't formally implemented it. It's something that's a part of the first 6 months of having TNCs at our airport that we're going to review and sort of figure out how the reporting and the achievement works of it. But we are going to impose an environmental KPI for our TNC agreements. Our base rate for trips is a $5 outgoing fee for all TNCs, which is equivalent to our taxi fee. Even though our taxis don't pay per trip, it's still equivalent to what they actually pay us at the end of the year. And what we're going to do with TNCs is if they don't comply with environmental KPI standard at the end of this first 6 months, they will be imposed an additional $5 per trip. So if you're paying $5 now, you don't meet compliance, it's $10 per trip. And at the end of the day, what that really comes down to is a mile per gallon calculation. Trip reporting. So initially, we really desired to have a system in place like other airports, such as SFO have. But because we're doing a pilot program for 1 year before we sign off into more formal terms, we decided to just require month-end data reports from our TNCs. So they're submitting them at the end of the month with payment 15 days later. We're going to continue to research real-time data products for the future because we would ultimately like to have one. So year to date, we started this program on March 31st. Year to date through August, we have documented 285,000 outgoing TNC trips, which has resulted in $1.4 million revenue, unanticipated revenue. Operational wrap up. So ahead of the March 31st implementation date for TNCs, we really spent a lot of time working with the TNC reps. And it went really well. We worked very collaboratively with them. We asked sort of what your shared goals were as far as communication, implementation went. We prepared the operating area together. Our operating area ended up being a little bit different than what they were used to. Instead of having their services pick up customers on our drive system, we elected to have them operate in our on-demand sort of ground transportation center where we have things like courtesy shuttles, our on-demand taxis, and our on-demand limos. The reason we did that is because we wanted to, again, get back to that level playing field of where people are operating and how they're operating. And then further, we have a very congested drive. We have up to 7 hours a day where our drive system is failing as far as level of service goes. And so what we didn't want to do is introduce hundreds or thousands of more vehicles into our drive system. So they are operating in our third floor ground transportation plaza. And we worked on that together. I won't say that they were super happy about the idea in the beginning, but what we did was we were able to sort of repurpose some areas of our public parking area and make a drive-in and a drive-out system. And we updated the signage to sort of make it clear to customers where they need to go to meet their Uber, Lyft, or Wings. We updated some signage, and we also made a brochure for all the drivers operating at SeaTac that just educated them on how to operate, where to stage, where to go, appropriate conduct, rules, instructions. And at implementation, we hired a couple of emergency hires for lot coordination work. So as I was describing a moment ago, we elected to have our TNCs operate in our third floor ground transportation center. Sorry, these aren't great pictures. The lighting in there makes for difficult pictures. But what a customer has to do is fairly similar to what a customer has to do to find a taxi at SeaTac. They follow all the signs to ground transportation, which takes them to our third floor ground transportation plaza and center. Curbside, you see on-demand limos and on-demand taxis, our Shuttle Express product, and all of our courtesy vehicles. The only difference is our TNC customers do have to cross a crosswalk to get into what was part of public parking to pick up their TNC ride. And this is all new signage. Prior to March 31st, when we went live, the TNCs and the airport staff worked together on proper communication, so we really wanted it to be clear about the work that we had done, the ground transportation outreach that we had previously done with all stakeholders involved, and we wanted it to be an exciting implementation. We had prior to this received hundreds of comments or complaints about our airport not being willing to allow Uber and Lyft and others to operate. So when we went live on March 31st, we really wanted to show that we had worked collaboratively together, and although it's a pilot project, an opportunity to test it out and see how it works, that we were excited about it. So this is just one example of, I think, dozens of media alerts about this. This is just a one-year pilot program. So this gives us an opportunity to test it out for 1 year, sort of work out all the wiggles, see if there's an opportunity to update some terms and make some changes. It has a 30-day cancellation clause, just like any other operating agreement at SeaTac. We did elect to provide a staging lot for TNCs. And an additional term that you've seen probably in other airport contracts is that we did impose an activation fee. This was based upon the assumption that TNCs had been operating at SeaTac prior to March 31st. And what we elected to do is if you had that number of trips, you had to provide a report showing us the number of trips that you'd had. You were to activate at that relative fee, so anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000. Here's a few more pictures. I call this the good, the bad, and the ugly. So the good is that we were able to come up with staging facilities for TNCs. We were not sure we would be able to. We are very land constrained at SeaTac Airport, and we had very little opportunity and options to provide our TNCs, and we weren't really sure that we were willing to do it because other pre-arranged operators don't have staging facilities. But we did elect to go that route, and I would say that's a good thing. The bad thing I would also say is that we found facilities for TNCs, and those facilities happen to be right next door to our on-demand taxi provider, and so there's really no buffer between our on-demand taxi service staging area and our TNC staging area. And so as you can imagine, that does mean that we've had to deal with some conflict and some issues. The center picture there, I don't know if you can see it, but that sort of big helix and piece of artwork is our rental car facility. Our rental car facility is located directly across the street from this staging lot where taxis and TNCs stage. So as you can imagine, the intersection getting out of both of those facilities has been very, very challenging. It took a while when our rental car facility opened up in 2012 for the taxis and the rental car buses to make friends. So we kind of had to start over with everybody making friends and sharing the light. And so that has posed some sort of operational and traffic congestion problems for us at that lot. We were not able to provide the TNCs with any kind of shelter or building, so what we provided them in the meantime are these lovely honey buckets, which is not pretty, but useful. Some more good and a little bit more bad to share with you. So I would say overall, the really great things about this program so far is that our customers really like it. Our customers are really happy. We've seen significant increase in ground transportation revenues. We weren't expecting a $1.4 million increase to our revenues in 2016, so that's really positive. We did redirect some traffic away from our curb down into our ground transportation plaza. We have updated signs. We have podiums now that one of the 3 TNCs are using, but I understand Lyft will get a podium as well, and that sort of organizes their customers in an efficient manner in our plaza area and provides customer service for those that have questions, and I think that's really great. And I do think it was great that we were able to provide off-site staging. Some of the difficult things, I had already mentioned the traffic and driver conflicts at the staging lot. That's naturally going to happen when you have thousands and thousands of people that maybe don't have the same agenda. It's something we've dealt with before with different operators. I don't know if this has occurred in any of your airports, but one of the difficult things for us in the staging lot is that as soon as the TNC started staging there, I think that some TNC drivers that weren't actually intending on working at the airport would just show up and hang out with their buddies at the lot. So we kind of had these people just like hanging out, having these gatherings, and I know I write lot parties there, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but nonetheless, there are TNC drivers out there just hanging out, not intending to work, and so that became very problematic for us. Too many people, garbage, sort of things like that to respond to. So really, I mean, there's things we can do better. We don't have the data piece together, we don't have the reporting piece together, but at the end of the day, if these are sort of the challenges you're dealing with, you know, they're things that you kind of deal with in the ground transportation world anyway, so they're not crazy different than what we're dealing with. But overall, I think our customers are really happy, and the program has been successful. I'm glad that SeaTac took the approach of taking our time, doing a little wait and see before we implemented, because it gave us the opportunity to really learn from you and learn from other airports and start to build relationships with the TNCs, which I think we did very well. So I hope next time after the one-year pilot program, I have more information about how the program went and more statistics, but that's sort of where SeaTac is now, and that's what I have to share with you today.